Okay, so this week we are tasked with making a video to talk about First Peter and specifically looking at how he talks about people in exile or foreigners or aliens and being in a different land. And so I think quite simply, what that means is that we are not from here, right? This is not our original home. And so as we live here as Christians, we are in a way in exile from the original home that God intended us to live in, whether it's Eden or heaven in his presence with him. However you want to look at that, we are intended to live with God and not in the world like how we are now in this world of sin. And so in First Peter, we are seeing a specific call to how to live in the world and what to expect when living in the world, and some strategies on how to live in exile from God in this world, but closer to him. So to begin, I just pulled that out from where we first see Peter talk about exiles or aliens in my translation, is in the first chapter. In the first couple of verses, he has like this introduction talking about himself, but then in verse 3 he says, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who reside as aliens or foreigners or exiles scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who are chosen according to the foreknowledge of God the Father by the sanctifying work of the Spirit, that you may obey Jesus Christ and be sprinkled with his blood. May grace and peace be yours in the fullest nature. So he's addressing this book, this letter, to people in exile from God, to Christians living in the world. And I want to draw it back real quick, and we talked about 1 John, and there's some interesting correlations here about living in the world. And so just to pull back from what we talked about before, there's two verses, 1 John 2:17 and 19. So 2:17 says, the world is passing away in its desires, but the one who does the will of God abides forever. So here we're seeing that the land that we're living in, according to John, the land that we're living in is passing away, and all the desires that go along with it. But the one who does the will of God abides forever. So here we have an instruction from John about living in the world. And then in 19 we see again, there's this example of people that are separated. So from those that have been exiled. So we have the exiling from God, and then we have those that are separated out from them. So he says, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have remained with us. So these people have separated themselves from the Christian church, from God's people, and they've now been brought out of that. And so that is a separate type of exile. But going back to 1 Peter. So 1 Peter is talking about living in the world and not being part of it. And so then later in 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 10, we have some examples of that. And 4:7-10 says, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. Above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without complaint. As each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. So we can see there's 4 things listed here in verses 7 through 10 that are instructions on how to live in the world. So number 1 that I pulled out is be of sober mind for the purpose of prayer. And so for me, what that means is that what am I doing that is polluting my mind? What am I doing that is taking control over my mind and causing me to think differently or to have cloudy judgment, not being able to focus on God? Either am I using any mind-altering substances, whether it's drugs or alcohol? Am I indulging myself in a TV addiction or a video game addiction that's altering my mind effect? For me, one of my biggest struggles in growing up and in the past has been with a video game addiction. So I can sit here, I mean, I got these headphones on, nice camera and everything. If you could see, my setup here, I got some good stuff. But, if I play too much, or if I get too into it, if I get too addicted to it, what happens is that I start having mood swings. I have emotional mood swings based on how I'm doing in the game. And if I'm not playing the game, then I'm depressed. And so that is something for me that is a mind-altering, diluting thing that keeps me from focusing on God, and it pulls me into this world. And many people struggle with different things, whether it's drugs or alcohol or relationships or the television, whatever it is, that alter their mind. And so we need to be of sober mind and of sound judgment for the purpose of prayer, and that we can be intentional in this world, praying for God's intervention in it, and for our good and for the good of others. The next one is keep fervent in your love. Okay, so he even says love covers a multitude of sins. So by loving one another and by doing it fervently with like a fever, then we are staying away from deeper sins if you focus on loving each other. And when we love one another, we can also keep others out of sin by being a support to them, by coming alongside them and speaking confidence into their lives. And we can pull everyone around us closer and closer to God by showing love and being of love. Next is hospitality to one another, and without complaint. So, inviting people into your home, being courteous towards other people, and allowing others to make use of the things that you have, and not complaining about it. It's so easy to say, oh yeah, sure, you can use this, or come on in, or whatever. And then once everyone leaves, we sit there and we say, oh, now I've got to clean this up all by myself, or like, I can't believe that person actually showed up. I didn't want them here. And we complain. So being hospitable to one another without complaint. And then we've each received spiritual gifts, and we should use those to serve one another. This is a representation of the flow. Everything is a representation of the flow, I think, in this, is that we've been given a gift, and we should use that to serve others. The gift is not ours to keep and hold on to. It's a gift that God has given us and empowered us with through the Holy Spirit, and we should be using that gift to then speak into other people's lives and be good stewards of it. And that is a whole representation of the grace of God. So God's grace in love, in hospitality, in sound, and in sober spirit, and everything like that, and the gift of being able to pray to Him, all that, the spiritual gifts is a representation of God's grace to us. And to be good stewards of that grace is to do these 4 things: be sober-minded for prayer, fervent in love, hospitable to other people, and using our gifts to serve one another. So that is my take on 1 Peter and the way that he is instructing us to live in this world but not of it, to be exiles and foreigners and aliens in the world, and not members of and citizens of it. We are citizens of a bigger world, of God's kingdom, and we don't belong here. This is not where we will end up. So that's my assignment. Let me know what you guys think.